Warning, this fic contains many dark and adult themes. For the full list provided by the author, please check the description below and proceed with caution. Welcome back, this is Veritaserum by Severitus 812, JessalynMichele, Book 3 of Harry Potter and 7 Years of Chaos. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy, and subscribe for future stories. Please check the description for a full list of tags, and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's get started. Chapter 18, Potter H. Individual Session, 29th of December 1993. Half an hour before Harry Potter was set to arrive in Michael Morris' therapy office, Michael sat down to review his notes and research on the client. Harry James Potter, 13-year male. Current diagnosis, manic depressive illness. Treatment plan, therapy and discussion of medication. Therapist will recommend foreign resources to SS if situation warrants. Home life, HP resides with guardian, SS, during the summers. During the school term, HP is a student at an elite boarding school for gifted students. SS states that HP excels in studies with minimal effort, despite HP having no formal education from primary year 3 to his first year in boarding school. Prior to residing with SS, HP was homeless from 811-8, as HP resided with maternal relatives who mentally, emotionally, and physically abused him and ultimately kicked him out. HP parents were killed when he was 1 year, and HP retains no solid memories. HP was told by relatives his parents had been addicts and abandoned him. According to SS, HP was subjected to verbal, physical, and sexual abuse while homeless. HP has shared minimal memories of this with SS. Trust is there. SS states HP has many close friends at school. HP has a pet owl who SS states he is kind and nurturing to. Current difficulties, HP displays signs of self-harm and has shown suicidal intent plans. HP has had 2 recurring episodes of depressive episodes since June 1993. HP also displayed manic behavior in summer of 1993. HP struggles with abandonment, godfather, and betrayals. HP displays deep mistrust of others in regards to honesty and his safety. HP displays anger easily and Denny's other emotions. HP discusses murder as expected retribution to others, unsure if truth or shock value. HP is manipulative-esque when feeling vulnerable or targeted in conversation. Current therapy plan, explore possible additional diagnoses, discuss depth of feelings towards others, identify thoughts on morality and right-wrong, discuss trusted relationships. Future therapy goals, coping mechanisms for depressive states, manic states, suicidal thoughts and thoughts of self-harm. Discuss past and how it impacts reality. Establish positive views of self and others. Misk notes, I have no hope that HP will continue therapy without sufficient pushing from SS. HP will likely attempt to manipulate situation to seem as if there is nothing wrong, or will refuse to speak altogether. Michael finished off his cup of coffee, extra strong for what he suspects will be an especially difficult hour, and went out to collect Harry. Harry, he smiled at the young man seated in the waiting room. Why don't you come in? Harry silently got up and slowly walked toward Michael. He raised a questioning brow when Michael held the door open before edging around him and quickly darting in the office. Michael closed the door and took his seat, gesturing for Harry to do the same. Harry sat on the edge of the couch, vigilantly looking around the room. He seemed much more unsettled than he had his last visit. Michael made a few quick notes of his behavior. H appears anxious and uncomfortable, fear of talking or being alone. Me. How are you today? Michael asked pleasantly. Brill, Harry said tightly. Is there anything specific you like to talk about today? Michael asked. Nope, Harry said, intentionally popping the P in a likely effort to be irritating. Michael just smiled. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Sure, Harry said as he scooted back in his seat. My name's Harry Potter, and I'm incredibly famous. Ah, you? Course I am, Harry scoffed. The Dark Lord tried to kill me and failed. Everyone knows my name because I defeated him once. Well, 3 times if you count Quirrell and the Ghost, which I do. I'm going to kill him for good one day. H has dreams of grandeur. Who is the Dark Lord? Michael asked, playing along with Harry's attempt to waste his hour session with fantasy stories. Harry leaned forward. His green eyes were twinkling mischievously behind his silver-framed glasses. They call him He Who Must Not Be Named, he whispered dramatically before laughing. I call him Timmy, though he hates that. And Timmy tried to kill you when you were a baby. Yep, Harry says. Couldn't do it though, could he? So I'm famous. Tell me something else about yourself, Michael suggested. There's nothing else to say, Harry said, his bored face now a stark contrast to the mischievous look before. Why don't you tell me about your friends then? Why? Severus said you have a lot of friends you met at school, said Michael. I thought perhaps if there was nothing else to say about yourself, then you might like to talk about them. What did Snape say about them? Harry asked suspiciously. H values privacy regarding his relationships. Unfortunately, just like I can't tell Severus the specifics that you share with me, I won't share the specifics of what he said either. In truth, Severus hadn't said much in their one session over the summer. He simply said that Harry had many close friends, and that he had stayed with a few of them the previous summer. Michael simply hoped that Harry would underestimate his own harmless manipulations to guide the conversation along. I dunno what to tell you, Harry eventually said. I have a whole bunch of friends, don't I? Michael maintained his polite look of interest to keep Harry at ease during their discussion. Who would you say that you're the closest to? He asked. Susan, Harry immediately said. It's not Luna. Harry scowled at the reminder of Severus, quoting the beginning of his suicide note. No, not Luna, he said tightly. I said Susan, did I? All right, Susan then, Michael said calmly. Why is she your closest friend? She was my first friend, Harry shrugged. She always takes my side, and she's always mad when I don't take her on missions with me. H values loyalty highly in his relationships. Michael ignored Harry's baiting phrase of going on missions as another attempt to derail the conversation. Would you say you love her as a friend? Harry flinched slightly before staring at the wall off to the side of Michael's head. His jaw was clenched tightly, and Michael could see that he was flexing his hands convulsively. H displays deep discomfort when discussing feelings of love. You don't have to answer any question you don't want to, Harry, he said softly. Would you say that you trust Susan? Course, Harry said, the muscles in his shoulders and torso relaxing slightly at the new question. She hasn't given me a reason not to. Do you usually trust people until they've given you a reason not to, or did Susan somehow earn it, like Severus did? Susan would never tell anyone any of my secrets, Harry said, looking properly at Michael with his face now reflecting irritation. So she bloody well earned it, didn't she? Did Severus earn it as well? Harry rolled his shoulders before answering. He did, he said curtly. And he lost it, Michael asked gently. Not your business, is it? Harry said. Trust is hard-earned and easily lost for H. Well, besides Susan and maybe still Severus, who else do you trust? Luna, Harry said, maybe Theo, sometimes Ron and Blaise, usually Draco, but he's a gossip, isn't he? Hermione and Neville a bit. Are those your other friends? Michael asked as he jotted down their names. Suppose so. Hermione and Luna aren't in the gang, but Hermione's a genius and Luna's, well, Luna, so we're friends. What about other adults? Harry blinked at him for a moment, before crossing his arms defensively across his chest. I don't spend a lot of time around other adults. Blaise's mum is a genius, and Susan's aunt is nice for a cop, but that's about it. H distrusts adults more than children. Michael made a note of it, even though it wasn't very surprising given his past history. Do you think there are adults who can gain your trust? He asked. Harry shrugged silently, his eyes narrow and suspicious. Who trusts you? Harry's suspicious look was gone in an instant, as he blinked at Michael in surprise at the question. Dunno, maybe Snape. Are you a trustworthy person? Harry shifted uncomfortably, dunno. Do people confide in you? Harry nodded his head after thinking it through for a moment. Sometimes about some stuff, he said vaguely. Okay, Michael smiled again at him, hopping to ease his way in to one of his preferred methods of establishing the client's view of their own morality. What if you told me one instance where you displayed that you are a trustworthy person, and one instance where you did? Sure, you first, Harry smirked. H uses information as a bartering system. Okay, Michael said easily, used to clients who preferred to trade instead of share. I believe I display my trustworthiness every day in my career, because I never share client information. He leaned towards Harry and spoke in a conspiratorial tone, and if you can keep a secret, Then I didn't display trustworthiness when I cheated on a math exam in school. Harry rolled his eyes at Michael's admission. "'Kay, so I was trustworthy when I told Ron I'd save his sister last year, and I did. And I suppose I wasn't very trustworthy when I killed Lockhart." Michael didn't frown, but he struggled to maintain his patient affect. Severus had told him over the summer of Harry's self-defense against a predator during a sexual assault. Was this the Lockhart Harry referred to? "Who is Lockhart?" he asked. "Teacher from school last year," Harry said with a sharp smile. "Cut his throat open with a sword, didn't I? Then I buried him under a bunch of boulders." H shows no hesitation at admitting to violence or murder, unsure if truth or lies. "And nobody at your school noticed that a teacher went missing?" "Course they did, they're stupid not blind," Harry scoffed. "Told em the basilisk killed him, and since I'm the only one that can open the chamber they couldn't go check, could they?" Death of teacher likely real H description, involving fantasy elements, separates his from the action. "What's a basilisk?" Michael asked, now hearing the odd term for a second time. "Giant snake," Harry said easily. "Can kill you with a single look. I killed it with a sword." H has minimal signs of psychosis fantasy stories, more likely to be attempts to avoid discussing reality. Michael hummed non-committally at Harry's story. He wouldn't refute his claims unless pressed for a response. "Let's go back to when you said you saved Ron's sister. What happened?" Harry smiled again, seemingly seeing through Michael's change in topics. "Ginny was in the chamber, wasn't she? She was possessed by the Dark Lord and using the basilisk to attack students. Dumbledore expelled me for it, but then Snape helped me get back in the school. The Dark Lord got sick of using Ginny and took her in the chamber to steal her soul so he could come back to life. So I went down there and Ron thought I wouldn't save her since I don't like her, but I did. Killed the basilisk, killed the ghost Dark Lord, and saved her life." Michael glanced at the clock and was subconsciously relieved to see that a little over half of Harry's allotted hour had passed. "So you went to save Ron's sister, proving you are trustworthy, but along the way you killed your teacher?" he asked. "Yep. Truth mixed with lies, does H believe, or just creating story to waste time?" "That sounds like a busy day," Michael said. "How did you feel when you proved to Ron that he could trust you when you said you'd save his sister?" Harry shrugged. "Fine. Told him he owes me another favor now." "Do you enjoy having him owe you favors?" Harry huffed as he crossed his arms again. "Course, why wouldn't I? Got a map off Fred and George for a favor, didn't I? I was gonna use it to find Black, but now there's loads more interesting things I can use it for." H enjoys holding power over others. "Why were you going to find your godfather?" "'Cause I was gonna kill him," Harry said boldly. "Because you felt as though he abandoned you as a baby." "He fucking did abandon me, I didn't feel anything," Harry said hotly. "Okay," Michael said soothingly. "I understand why you would feel that way. Do you think it would help if you told him how you felt instead of just threatening to hurt him?" "Sure," Harry laughed, a joyless and cold sound. "Hey Sirius, it really hurt my feelings when you left me to go on a murder spree." Harry laughed again before rolling his eyes. "I don't think so." "Why not?" "Because it's stupid," Harry said. "Makes me sound weak." H hides vulnerability behind anger violence. "Is it weakness to share your feelings with others?" Michael asked. "Having feelings is a weakness," Harry said. "I think having and showing our feelings can be an incredible strength." "You'd be dead in a week if you lived on the streets," Harry said flatly. "Not like you though, right?" Michael said casually. "You lasted years because you're strong and smart, right?" "Exactly," Harry said, a satisfied gleam appearing in his eyes. H shows pride in strength and survival, strong sense of resilience and self-reliance. Michael checked the time and saw they had 10 minutes remaining. He decided to use this time for an activity he uses for all his patients with suicidal thoughts or tendencies. "Harry, our session for today is almost over," he said. "I'd like you to do something for me if you would, before our time is up." Harry quirked one eyebrow in a silent gesture to elaborate. "Could you tell me 5 things in your life that make you happy?" "Snape says none of my memories are truly happy," Harry said with a scowl, "so probably not." Michael made a quick note of the odd comment, supposedly from Harry's guardian. "You misunderstand," he said kindly. "Not 5 memories of times you were happy, but 5 things in your life right now that bring you happiness." "Oh," Harry blinked before furrowing his brows down as he thought. Well, Sevi makes me happy. Luna and Susan do too. Do they count as two things? Let's count friends as one thing, Michael said. So your pet owl and your friends are two things. Can you think of three more? Flying magic and, I dunno, hot chocolate maybe. Michael felt a stab of disappointment at Harry's continued inclusion of fantasy elements brought back into the conversation. He didn't have high hopes that Harry would take therapy seriously. Most people who are being pushed into it rarely do after all. But it was still tiring to spend time with a client so willfully dedicated to avoiding reality. H states pet and friends bring joy. Also flying and magic, Coco added as afterthought. So what I would like you to do is between now and the next time I see you, anytime you feel sad or upset, I'd like you to reach out to your friends or play with your pet, or even get a drink of hot chocolate, okay? But don't go flying, Harry asked with a small smirk playing on his lips. Michael smiled indulgently. I think it would be better to focus on your friends, he said. Harry got to his feet as the timer went off and gave Michael a look of enormous amusement. You're not so bad, he said. I told Snape I could tell you anything I wanted. He said to watch myself before I end up in Azkaban. I'm glad you approve, Michael said in response to the nonsensical comment, and you can of course tell me anything, okay? "'Kay," Harry said, "see ya." After Harry left the office, Michael released a breath and took a few minutes to sit back and contemplate the session. He transferred his quickly jotted notes to more elaborated ones based on the conversation and observed nonverbal cues. Michael scribbled a final note on Harry's chart before deciding to call it an early day and go to the pub for a drink. Due to his indifference to violence or loss of life, H will likely be a prime candidate for a psychopathy diagnosis at 18. Chapter 19, Snape S. Individual Session, 2nd of January 1994. Severus, come on in, Michael said pleasantly. The taller and quite imposing, if he was being honest, man stood gracefully and relocated to the sofa in Michael's office. Michael had been looking forward to this session with a sense of trepidation. He had no doubts that Severus would ask about Harry's session and deny himself the opportunity to ease his own burdens through sharing his thoughts and feelings on the recent changes. It didn't seem to be a coincidence that Severus scheduled Harry's individual session before his own. Though Michael would prefer to keep confidentiality for Harry, he had no legal obligations to withhold information regarding a minor from their parent or legal guardian if directly requested. Which Severus immediately did. How did Harry's session go? I think maybe we should let Harry's session stay private and instead focus on you today, Michael said with a polite smile. And I think we should discuss Harry's session, as that is the reason I am here today, Severus said in a dry tone. Michael mentally sighed. He wondered if Harry had learned his stubbornness from Severus, or if it was a happy coincidence that they found each other. I am concerned about Harry's lax opinion on violence and death, he said carefully. I also believe he would benefit from finding additional adults that he could trust. That may be difficult due to the recent situation with his godfather, Severus grimaced. I encouraged him to begin trusting others and then it backfired, rather spectacularly. S shows good instincts in encouraging H towards healthy relationships. Oh, Michael was interested. Would you like to tell me what happened? Harry found a stray dog he began confiding in, Severus said slowly. Apparently he told the dog quite a bit with the belief that it would be unable to repeat any of his secrets. Secrets or his history and thoughts and feelings, Michael interrupted. I believe to Harry it is all one and the same, Severus said. H believes thoughts, feelings, history are all secrets to be guarded, Michael jotted down thoughtfully. Sorry for the interruption, he smiled towards the other man. Please go ahead. Harry confided quite a bit to the dog, and was unaware that he was being spied on by his godfather. He now feels quite betrayed, and I am concerned it will prevent him from confiding in others now. Harry's godfather, Sirius, was spying on him while he was talking to a dog, Michael asked. Yes. Michael stalled with his pen above his notebook. He really wasn't quite sure how to record this. H trust in dogs betrayed by godfather spying, he eventually wrote with a quizzical frown. And he told Harry that he spied on him. Yes. How did Harry react? Severus sighed and rubbed a weary hand across his eyes. He threw a knife at him. Michael blinked at Severus a few times, startled by the matter-of-fact tone he used. And you saw this? Yes. And what did you do to discourage that sort of behavior? Severus raised his brows, apparently surprised by the question. I thought it was best they worked it out between themselves. S indifferent to H violence. What are you writing? Severus asked, his voice sharp now. I wrote that Harry responded to what he believes is a betrayal of trust with violence, which, as I said before, is incredibly worrisome, Michael lied. Severus continued watching him suspiciously, so Michael set his notebook aside for the moment. Who is Lockhart? He asked. Who did Harry say Lockhart is? Severus asked. He said he was a teacher at your school, Michael said. He also said that he died. Did he? Severus murmured. I would like you to tell me exactly what Harry said about Lockhart. Michael shivered as a gust of cold wind seemed to invade his office. Of course, he said easily. Harry said he killed him with a sword and buried his body underneath a pile of boulders. Stupid brat, Severus grumbled under his breath. And did you believe him? I believe he killed him, Michael said, his tongue feeling much looser than usual. I don't think he used a sword, nor do I believe there was a basilisk involved. A basilisk? Severus repeated, his eyes taking on a dark look. Harry told you there was a basilisk. He did, Michael said. Lockhart was killed by the fires by the arsonist I told you about previously, Severus said. Harry had nothing to do with it. Michael considered this new information as it paired with what Severus told him over the summer. He knew that a student had been setting fires around their school, injuring students, and Harry was temporarily expelled as the main suspect. Severus had fought for his re-enrollment after another fire was set while Harry was expelled. Interesting, Michael said. I wonder why Harry would claim credit for his death if he was cleared of being the arsonist. What is your best theory? Severus asked. I believe Harry used the cover of the arsonist to kill him, Michael said. I think that Harry is incredibly dangerous and should probably be committed to a psychiatric hospital for the safety of others. Is that so? Severus hummed. So you believe a mere child is beyond hope, evil, tainted? Of course not, Michael said, shocked by Severus' insinuations. But I do think that Harry confessed to killing 2 men, not including the one you told me of. If these are true and not just the dark imaginings of a troubled teen, then Harry has actually become Britain's youngest serial killer. How dare you? Severus hissed, his face blanching. Is this what I'm paying you for, to call my ward a killer? I just told you that Harry did not kill that man. He died in an accident caused by his own folly, I might add. S denial of H possible homicides. Okay, Michael said placatingly. Why do you think he told me he killed Lockhart then, along with a man named Quirrell and a Dark Lord he calls Timmy? Jesus Christ, Severus muttered, now pinching the bridge of his nose in irritation, because the child is a moron. S frustrated by H sharing information in sessions. I know this is difficult, Severus, Michael said gently. Parents never want to see their children as anything aside from perfect, but even if Harry was just boasting to shock me, surely you can see why it's a cause for concern. Of course I'm concerned about his behavior. Would I be here if I was? Why are you so frustrated right now? Michael asked calmly. Because Harry is an imbecile with no common sense, Severus said. I hoped he would open up about his depression, and instead he bragged about murders to you. I believe I have earned this feeling of frustration. Michael very carefully wrote down a startling realization he had. Despite his defense, S does not doubt H killed teacher plus Quirrell. After the situation you described where his godfather spied on him opening up about himself to the dog, did you really think Harry would speak with me? Michael asked curiously. Severus was an intelligent man, shrewd with calculating eyes. Surely he knew better. I sometimes find myself foolishly naive when it comes to Harry, Severus admitted bluntly. I hoped that he would, at a minimum, discuss his thoughts on death with you. You mean his suicidal thoughts? Michael clarified. Yes, Severus said, his face once again paling at the topic. Harry doesn't trust me, Michael said kindly. I think it seems like he trusts you quite a bit, but he thinks having those feelings makes him weak, and he wants you to see him as strong. So what do I do to encourage him to tell me when he feels that way? Severus asked, his voice laced with desperation. I have been in a constant state of worry that I will wake up one morning and he will have poisoned himself and be gone. S shows incredible care and concern towards H in private, or does H know? I don't think Harry will confide in you when he feels this way, Michael said as gently as he could. You are very important to him, and your opinion matters more than anyone's. I doubt he would be here if anyone else aside from you tried to push the issue. I think Harry needs someone else to trust, someone more emotionally open when he's feeling vulnerable. Severus stared at him for a long moment. Michael gave him time to process what he was saying. Your professional opinion is what? That I am not emotional enough for Harry to confide in. The fact that Severus sneered on the word emotional was really answer enough, but Michael indulged him so there were no misunderstandings. Do you praise Harry when he makes accomplishments? I am sure that I have, Severus replied stiffly, which sounded like a no. Do you give him appropriate positive physical affection? Harry dislikes being touched by males. And he will continue to do so if he is never taught what appropriate physical affection can be, Michael said softly. What am I supposed to do then? Pet the child's head and tell him he's a good boy? Severus asked, throwing his hands up in exasperation at the very idea. Shows signs of own stunted, repressed emotions. Someone should, Michael said. Do you share your feelings with Harry so he knows it is acceptable to do so? On occasion. Which sounded like another no. Have you told Harry that you love him? I fail to see the relevance of these questions, Severus said. Michael was sure he could hear the man grinding his teeth. H emulates closed emotional behavior from S needs more open adult in life to mimic, he wrote quickly. Harry respects you, Severus, trusts you, you obviously mean quite a bit to him, Michael said, but he needs another adult who is more emotionally open that he can turn to when he needs to. He gets his strength from you, clearly. Michael smiled in an attempt to soothe Severus, who was growing more visibly frustrated at every word he spoke, but he needs someone to learn vulnerability from. Michael watched as Severus became thoughtful. The mutt and the wolf, Severus sighed. A dog, heavens no, Michael chuckled at Severus' odd reply. I meant a human adult. Apologies, I meant Harry's godfather, Black, and his partner Lupin. They're both practically huff, they both practically ooze emotions, Severus said with another grimace. S suggests godfather as resource for H despite own jealousy regarding connection. The felon that Harry threw a knife at, Michael asked, do you think he would be willing to be an emotional support to Harry, or an appropriate one? Oh, he's willing, Severus grumbled irritably. Harry threw a knife at him, told him he was going to kill him, and all Black said was, I love you, pup, I care about you, I want to be there for you. Oh, godfather displays positive emotions towards H, along with easy forgiveness. That's excellent, Michael said enthusiastically. Do you think that you can encourage Harry to reach out and build a relationship with him? Do you truly believe Harry needs it? Severus asked warily. Harry's paternal grandmother was Black's aunt. He very likely inherited his mental illness from his family. Black has always been prone to brash, idiotic, manic behavior. You think that Black also has manic depressive illness? It is a distinct possibility. His family is quite known for mental instability. And you don't think that should be even more reason for him and Harry to have a relationship, Michael suggested. For Harry to have someone who understands what he's going through, someone who has personally experienced it for themselves. Severus unexpectedly sighed and rested his head on the back of the sofa. I won't find the answer alone. One of us cannot find results without the other, he said flatly. She could have been more specific. What's that? Michael asked curiously. Someone else has already encouraged you to work together with Black. You could say that, Severus said, sitting back upright and rubbing his temples. A mad little witch who speaks in riddles. Michael hummed, uncomprehending of Severus' ramblings. Though if someone else had already encouraged him to work together with Harry's godfather, then surely he knew there were more benefits than drawbacks. Do you think that your opinion of Black will impact Harry's decision to build a relationship for someone who could potentially have a terrifically positive influence on him? Michael asked after Severus sat in silent contemplation for a long minute. Severus scowled and crossed his arms, much like Harry did when he was feeling defensive in his session. My opinion of Black is irrelevant to Harry, Severus said coolly. Okay, tell me this, do you think there are benefits to Harry and his godfather having some form of a relationship? Severus nodded his head curtly after a moment. And whose opinion do you think matters the most to Harry? I get it, Severus said with a frown. If I do not play nice with the M with Black, then Harry will not either. Delightful. I believe S sees benefit in HB relationship and will encourage it. Michael gave him a sympathetic smile before glancing at the time. We have about 15 minutes left, and I would like to ask you, of all Harry's behaviors, which would you say is the most worrisome to you? His suicidal thoughts and actions, Severus said immediately. Not his homicidal thoughts or actions. Harry is a troubled teen, Severus said curtly. I would simply like to see him live long enough to outgrow his, more violent behaviors. S positive role model for H depression, not for H violence. What are you writing now? Severus asked. I just said that I want him to live long enough to get help for his other behaviors. Which is what I wrote, Michael said calmly. You believe I am an unfit guardian for Harry, Severus said with a shrewd look. Do you think you're an unfit guardian for Harry? S insecure about guardianship. I believe I have done what I thought was best in each situation the chaotic brat has put me in, Severus said tersely. I also believe that any other guardian would have either given up on him or had him hospitalized, as you so positively suggested. There you go then, Michael said, struggling to maintain his easy smile in the face of the snarky man. You have done what you thought was best every time. Who could ask for a more devoted guardian? Severus stared at him with a guarded expression, as if checking to ensure that Michael was not mocking him. Which he was. Severus clearly cared about Harry and was doing his best, but nobody can expect one man to provide for Harry in the many, many different ways he needs it. Eventually Severus must have felt satisfied with what he saw, because he nodded, and relaxed back into the sofa once more. Do you think you could encourage Harry and his godfather to attend a family session before the two of you return to school? Have you lost your mind? Severus said incredulously. I have barely managed to convince Harry to come with me, and you expect me to convince him to come along with the man he threw a knife at last week. I don't expect you to do anything, Michael said gently, but I do think that if you could convince Harry that maybe we could start to mend that bridge before he returns to school. Severus mumbled something under his breath that sounded like a string of curses. Fine, he said irritably. I will do my best to get Harry to agree to come along with the Mew along with Black. Wonderful, then I believe we can end our session here today, and I will see you all on the 4th. Wonderful indeed, Severus sneered. This is a dream come true. Michael kept a pleasant smile on his face all the up until the office door closed behind Severus, before collapsing in his chair and burying his face in his hands. He remembered his mother pushing him towards pediatric medicine when he was declaring a major in his education. Think of the sick Barbies you can help, Mike, she said. But knew he wanted to help heal people's minds. And now here he was, getting his wish. He dutifully transcribed his notes from the session, before once again closing up the office for the day. He left a note for Hannah, his secretary, to reschedule any appointments on the 4th that follow behind the Snape Potter appointment. At the rate their sessions are going, he doubted whether he would have the patience or stamina to deal with anyone after that session. He also asked her to double the time for the session. 1 hour probably wasn't going to be long enough to break the ice, let alone get any real work done. He'd probably charge Severus triple rate for the session. God knows he'll earn it. Chapter 20, Family Session II. Family Session 2, 4th of January 1994. Family Case Notes. Participants: Harry Potter 13-year male, Severus Snape legal guardian, Sirius Black godfather. Current difficulties: Harry has built a relationship of trust with Severus since July of 1991. Guardianship was finalized in February of 1993. Sirius escaped from a prison in July of 1993 and had his name cleared of previous offenses in December 1993. Harry feels betrayed by Sirius both for not taking placement of him as an infant and for spying on him, confiding thoughts, feelings, history with pet on school grounds. Severus states that Harry responded violently, threw a knife, when confronted with Sirius, betrayal. Severus believes that Sirius shares MD diagnosis with Harry. Due to Severus' closed emotional state, it is highly recommended that Harry build a relationship with Sirius, who, according to Severus, is more easily able to share emotions, and even told Harry that he loved him after alleged assault. Session goals: begin to build on relationship between Harry and Sirius. Examine past history between Severus and Sirius, and see if terms can be agreed upon for Harry's sake. Allow Harry to hear Sirius' feelings during session. Note Severus and Harry reactions. Long-term goals: establish emotional connections between Harry Sirius and Harry Severus. Establish open communication between Sirius regarding Harry's mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Misk notes, Severus has done a commendable job raising Harry thus far, even with the indifference to Harry's violent streak. Severus needs to find ways to help Harry make more positive choices without feeling as if he is failing as a guardian. Harry needs to see a positive moral example from Severus and a positive emotional example from Sirius. Ideally, Harry would find both qualities in both men. Realistically, one each is already a stretch of a goal. Morning, Hannah, Michael Morris said to his secretary as he entered his office at 7:50 that morning. Dr. Morris, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Hannah appeared to be on edge and slightly frantic. I told them to wait out here, but they started arguing, and when in your office they closed the door, and I guess they stopped because I can't hear them at all now. Who? Michael asked, though he already suspected the answer. Your 8 o'clock, the Potter-Snape appointment, Hannah said. Michael checked the time and saw that he still had 7 minutes before he had to enter the office. I'll be right back, he said. I'm just going to go grab a pen out of my car. Hannah gave him a knowing look. Your wife won't be happy if you start back up, she warned him. Michael ignored her and went out the back door to have a quick smoke before the session started. He had already been dreading the session. The fact the clients showed up and began arguing in the lobby was a sure sign that peace wasn't going to be easily obtained today. He inhaled deeply as he considered the dynamics of the 3 men inside. Harry, the possible teenage serial killer who is well on his way to a psychopathy diagnosis. Severus, the emotionally stunted, insecure, and jealous guardian. And Sirius, the possible manic-depressed godfather who broke out of a prison, and supposedly childhood bully of Severus, if Harry was to be believed. Which he typically wasn't, because Harry is incredibly manipulative and avoids reality and responsibility through fantasy. Wonderful. Michael stubbed out the cigarette and drug himself back inside. He opened his office door at exactly 8:01 to glares from all 3 occupants. You're late, Severus said shortly from one end of the sofa. Cut him some slack, Snape, it's 1 bloody minute. A man with long, dark, curly hair snapped at Severus from the opposite end of the sofa. Michael assumed this was the godfather, Sirius Black. Don't talk to him like that, Harry said, pompously seated in Michael's chair, his feet up on his desk. Not his fault Mikey's late, is it? Apologies, gentlemen, I had a call that ran long, he lied. Hello, Michael Morris, you must be Sirius Black. Michael offered his hand to Sirius, who shook it good-naturedly. The one and only, Sirius said with a grin. Harry scoffed lightly from behind Michael. Harry, would you mind moving, please? It's easier for me to take notes if I'm beside my desk, Michael said kindly as he turned to face the teen in his chair. So where do ya think I'm going to sit? Harry asked. You can sit here, Sirius said, indicating the spot between himself and Severus. I don't bite. Harry gave him an impassive look. Have you gotten a rabies shot? Severus snorted at Harry's snide comment. Come sit, Harry, I will pull another chair from the lobby. Harry slowly got up at Severus' command and edged away from the desk, keeping over an arm's length away from both Michael and Sirius. As soon as Severus pulled a chair from the lobby inside the office, Harry snagged it and put it beside Severus' prior spot on the sofa. Thanks, he said to Severus, who sighed and resumed his seat. Well, Michael clapped his hands and surveyed the 3 men. I like to start bigger sessions like this off with a little icebreaker. We each go around the room and say one good thing that's happened to us this week and one thing we're hoping to gain from our session today. Okay. The looks he received were not optimistic, but he soldiered on. So I'll start. Something good that happened to me this week was I managed to schedule a time out next month to go on a fishing trip with my mates from university, and one thing I hope we gain from this session is cordial conversation. Severus. Severus scowled but seemed to put some thought into his response. I heard back from a coworker regarding a project we are working on. We believe we may have finally made a breakthrough. I would also like to gain civilized conversation. Severus gave a pointed look at Sirius, who rolled his eyes. That's wonderful, Michael said enthusiastically. Sirius, how about you? Sirius furrowed his brows down for a few moments while he thought. I rented a place in a village near Harry's school, which was good, and I guess I'd like to be able to talk to Harry without him hatting me. Sirius grinned at Harry, who scowled in return. That is good news, Michael said before turning towards the scowling teen in the room. And you, Harry? Something good that happened was when Snape wasn't home I found my knives and put them somewhere he couldn't get them. Harry smirked at Severus' sudden look of irritation. And all I want out of this session is the book Snape promised me for showing up and not hurting Black. Michael was indifferent to Harry revealing Severus had been bribing him to come to therapy. Severus wasn't the first parent to do so, and he certainly wouldn't be the last. And if a book kept Harry from starting a fight in his office, then perhaps he owed Severus some gratitude. "What book is it?" he asked Harry. "A History of Grey Arts Through the Canadian Country," Harry said with a satisfied look on his face. Michael had no idea what grey arts were, but assumed it was a foreign concept given that the book title mentioned Canada. "Shut up," Severus hissed at Harry. Harry shrugged and slumped down in his seat a little. "Mikey doesn't care, do ya?" Harry asked. "Michael," he corrected him gently, wishing he had a second smoke before coming inside. "And you guys can talk about anything in here, there are no limits." Harry and Sirius, oddly enough, both laughed at this, while Severus gave Harry an inscrutable look that Michael thought was a silent plea for him to watch what he says. SS worried about H oversharing. Alright, well, since Severus and Sirius both would like to gain some semblance of normal conversations during the session, why don't we start there? Michael suggested. What do you think is stopping you all from having these conversations before now? Black's an idiot, Harry snarled with a heated look at Sirius. Until now, Snape hated him. I still hate him, Severus said with his own scowl. I am merely trying to allow you to find some semblance of a relationship with the man. I'm not so bad once you get to know me. Sirius grinned at Michael with a self-conscious rub of his neck. Made some mistakes, but I'm human, yeah. You're a filthy, stupid dog, Harry muttered. Not so filthy anymore, Sirius said. SB provides opposite of SS light-hearted attitude. Let's start with Severus, shall we? Michael interrupted. Severus, can you give me 3 legitimate reasons why you dislike Sirius? Only 3, Severus raised one of his brows in a look of faux surprise. And here I prepared at least 2 dozen. Top 3 then, Michael said with a forced look of patience. He had counted on Severus to provide a stable and calming role model for Harry during the session. He hadn't realized the man harbored so much ill will towards Sirius. He once tried to kill me when I was 16, Severus said in a dry tone, which I believe ranks as the top reason. Oi, that's not fair. I didn't force you in that tunnel and you were being a nosy. Watch it, Harry said coolly. I'd hate to cut a paw off. That's enough, Michael interrupted Sirius and Harry both. Let's let Severus finish, okay? At Sirius' nod and Harry's shrug, Michael turned back to Severus. Go ahead. He also spent 7 years, pranking me to the point of hospitalization multiple times, Severus said with a cold glare towards Sirius. And he wasted 5 months prancing around instead of using his remaining brain cell to clear his name, which directly caused harm to Harry. SS dislikes SB for injuries to both himself and H, Michael wrote before turning to Sirius. Okay, Sirius, what do you have to say about Severus, reasons he dislikes you? First off, if Snape hadn't been nosing around my friends, then he never would have been in the tunnel that night, Sirius said with a glare towards Severus. And Moony. Moony, Harry interrupted, his eyes narrowed. Who's Moony? Remus, Sirius said. And who is Remus? Michael asked. My friend, Sirius said with an uncomfortable glance toward Harry. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs, Harry cried suddenly. Lupin called me stupid, said it's a pity I didn't inherit my mum's brains. He what? Severus asked sharply. When did he do that? Sirius asked. On the map I got, and you're Padfoot, ain't ya? You said I'm only half as charming and good-looking as my dad, Harry nearly shouted with a fierce look at Sirius. Hey, let's. You have our map? Sirius asked, ignoring Michael altogether. That's brilliant, Harry. No, it's not, Harry said. You all fucking insulted me, didn't you? Language, Severus said, only to also be ignored. It wasn't personal, pup, it's just a charm we used. Insults anyone who tries to see it without knowing the phrase, Sirius said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. Shut up, Severus hissed at Sirius with a small glance towards Michael. Oh, Sirius glanced towards Michael and frowned. Sorry. He doesn't care, Harry said. Mikey just thinks we're crazy. Michael would have argued the point, but they did sound rather crazy in that moment, and nobody was listening to him regardless. I think we got off track. Pettigrew is Wormtail, isn't he? Harry asked Sirius. Called me a midget. My dad told me to try for a resort. Sirius laughed, as if this odd conversation was hilarious instead of headache-inducing. At least Severus looked as if he were experiencing the same pains that Michael was. I think we've gotten off track here, gentlemen, Michael said more firmly than he had before. Sirius was explaining his side to Severus, reasons for disliking him. Oh yeah, Sirius grinned easily at Michael's reminder while Harry shrugged, unrepentant. So anyway, Snape wouldn't have almost been hurt if he hadn't been so nosy. Maybe I did prank him, but it's not like he didn't do it back just as hard, and I did reach out, to Snape no less, when I realized the Dementors were hurting Harry. SB shows little remorse towards injuring SS in the past. The prison guards were hurting Harry, Michael asked. Oh, Sirius glanced at Severus with an apologetic look on his face. They were creating an unsettling environment which was triggering Harry's depression, Severus said plainly. They suck your soul out, Harry said, his eyes glittering in the way Michael noticed they do when he's saying something to get a purposeful response. They eat your happy memories and then eventually suck out your soul. Harry, I swear to God, Severus muttered while Sirius chuckled. It's okay, Severus, if that's how Harry views them, then that's his opinion, Michael said calmly, but I'd like to go back to Sirius if we could. Sirius, you've gotten a chance to share your side to Severus' complaints. Can you acknowledge the validity in his reasoning? Sirius sent a sideways look towards Severus and frowned. I can, he said, albeit begrudgingly. SB acknowledged SS complaints, Michael noted with no small amount of relief. Now it's your turn, he said again to Sirius. Do you have 3 reasons to dislike Severus? Suppose him being a Death Eater doesn't mean much to you, does it? Harry hissed loudly at that, which was rather concerning as it wasn't the first time he's done so, and Severus grimaced and made an odd tick towards his left arm. I'm afraid I don't know what a Death Eater is meant to mean, Michael said slowly. Can you elaborate? It's a gang, Harry said, and Snape used to be one, but he isn't in it anymore because he's in my gang. H pursues gang affiliations. I am not in your gang, Harry, Severus said. I am in no gang. What's a gang? Sirius asked. Which was a rather curious question, considering the man spent 12 years in a prison. That's what you were in, Dumbledore's bloody order, weren't you? Harry sneered in Sirius' direction. The Order and the Death Eaters, a bloody joke. How is the Order the same as the Death Eaters? Sirius looked insulted at Harry's insinuation. And your gang of teenage misfits is the precise image of seriousness, Severus scoffed. Hang on, I'm sorry, what gangs are we discussing here? Michael interjected. Severus was in a gang called the Death Eaters, Sirius was in one led by the headmaster of your boarding school called the Order, and Harry has one. Yep, Harry said, mine's the best though, you could join if you were magic. All 3 have gang affiliations, school specific or cause of connections. There are no books in Azkaban, Severus said quietly to Harry. Shut up. I thought we weren't allowed to talk about magic here. Sirius jumped in with an accusing look towards Severus. We are. Michael definitely could hear Severus grinding his teeth, and judging by the sheepish look on Sirius' face, he wasn't the only one. Michael appreciated Severus' approach towards practicality for their session, which he was dismayed to see still had 90 minutes remaining. We've gotten off track again, Michael said. Let's back up and try to not interrupt each other, okay? Sirius, you said one of the reasons you dislike Severus is because he was in a gang that I'm assuming your gang didn't get along with. Sirius snorted and crossed his legs. You could say that. All right, and Harry, you said Severus is no longer part of this gang, right? Nope, he's on my side now, Harry said with a small grin towards Severus. Great, so what are 2 other, currently legitimate, reasons you dislike Severus? Michael asked Sirius. Sirius scrunched his brows down in thought for a few long moments before he shrugged lightly. Can't think of anything right now. You were being a git to him just the other week, Harry said incredulously. Well, I thought he wasn't keeping a good eye on you when I told him that you were in danger, did I? Sirius defended himself. I wanted to check on you, and he was being territorial. Harry glanced at Severus, who sighed. He means I was restricting his access to you by displaying ownership, Severus explained, which I absolutely was not doing, despite his juvenile insults. I didn't call you a juvenile insult until you rubbed it in my face that you were Harry's guardian and not me, Sirius said. Which was you being territorial? I just wanted to check on him. SB shows good protective instincts towards H despite immaturity. Snape doesn't own me, Harry said in a hard voice. What do you mean by that, Harry? Michael asked. Harry rolled his eyes and crossed his arms reflexively. Michael saw his fists clenching and unclenching. H self-soothes with hand muscle responses. Just what I said, Snape doesn't own me, nobody does. H fear of being owned. Okay, so nobody owns Harry. Severus hurt Sirius' feelings by bringing up his status as Harry's guardian, and Sirius, you can't think of any other reason to dislike Severus, Michael summarized, once again trying to bring the session back on track. He's a prat, but Harry likes him, doesn't he? So he must be human in there somewhere. Sirius shrugged with a grin towards Harry. Plus he's doing a good favor for Moony, and everyone says he's watched over Harry since he came to school. So I can't think of any currently legitimate reasons to be mad just yet. I probably will soon though. SB willing to put aside past for H. Severus, can you recognize that Sirius is willing to put aside his past dislike in favor of moving forward peacefully? Didn't say I didn't dislike him, Sirius muttered quietly enough that Michael could ignore it. Severus looked towards Harry, who was glowering at Sirius, and rolled his eyes. I can, he said dryly, though since I never attempted to kill. Great, Michael interrupted. So it's Harry's turn now. Harry, do you have 3 current reasons to be upset with Severus? If he stays out of my stuff and vows not to tell anyone anything about me again, then no, Harry said. I suppose I should have left you to be miserable alone with no support then, Severus said. I was fine, Harry said stubbornly. I didn't need support, I needed the Dementors to be gone. So you acknowledge that you were depressed? Michael asked gently. No, Harry glowered at him. I was not depressed. The Dementors literally make you feel crazy, that's their job. H views depression as insanity. You know being depressed doesn't make you crazy, right? It's a normal response to chemical imbalances in our brains. Harry turned to Severus. Did he just say my brain is imbalanced? Sirius chuckled again, which earned him another hate-filled look from Harry. Just because I said I wouldn't kill you here doesn't mean I won't the second we leave, Harry said. We aren't killing anyone, Michael said hastily. Harry, please don't threaten Sirius. Harry rolled his eyes and slumped down in his chair. Severus, can you acknowledge the validity of Harry's complaints? Severus' brows rose in incredulity. You believe I should regret informing you of Harry's struggles, and for finding the note in his dorm? I do not, Michael said calmly. What I think you should do is acknowledge that even if you weren't wrong, that Harry was hurt by your actions, and you can acknowledge his feelings. Harry, predictably, curled his upper lip at this. Severus turned a thoughtful face towards Harry and spoke very solemnly. I apologize that my actions injured the trust you placed in me. Harry blinked, taken aback by Severus' genuine apology. Are you gonna do it again? If I believe your life is in danger, then I'm afraid I will, Severus said. Then you're not really sorry, are you? I do regret that you feel less trusting towards me, though I wish that you would acknowledge that I was concerned for your safety. H does not accept apologies without supporting actions. I can make you a deal, Severus said in a slow way that made Michael believe he was weighing his words carefully. If you will agree to inform me the next time you consider ending your life, then I will agree to not invade your privacy like I did before. Michael and Sirius both watched as Harry silently studied Severus for a few moments. Deal, Harry eventually said, with a curt nod of his head. SS very attuned to H thought processes, Michael wrote with a broad smile. Excellent, really guys, this is a great step. He ignored their matching eye rolls and refocused on Harry. Now, do you have 3 currently valid reasons you dislike Sirius? I have a dozen, Harry said with a small grin towards Severus, who Michael was surprised to see smile in return. H seeks approval from SS, which seems freely given affection. Top 3 then, Michael said lightly. 1. He let Dumbledore send me to Surrey when he shouldn't have. 2. He tricked me into thinking he was just a dog. 3. His boyfriend is a prat, Harry said, ticking his reasons off as he went. Boyfriend, Sirius yelped. Who told you that? Harry gave a pointed look at Severus, who turned a bland face to Sirius. Was your tasteless preference a secret? Not tasteless, Sirius scowled, but not your business to be spreading around, is it? Are you ashamed of your sexuality? Michael asked. Probably ashamed of his boyfriend, I would be, Harry smirked. Moony made a couple mistakes, but he's a good person, Sirius said. He isn't like us pup, he doesn't get it, but he tries. You and I are not the same, Harry said harshly. You can be tragically misunderstood all by yourself. I'm not misunderstood, Sirius said easily. Except, maybe you don't understand me, but you would if you even bothered to try. Why would I bother to try? Harry asked, tilting his head in curiosity. You left me behind, you don't mean anything to me. Michael expected Sirius to react poorly to Harry's harsh statement, but he just grinned at him instead. You used to call me Paddy when you were a baby, Sirius said. Your dad lost the plot since your first word was Mama and your second was Paddy. He thought you said Daddy until you reached for me. SB offers connection to parents. That's a cute story, Black, Harry said, clearly unmoved by the story. Suppose that was before you let Dumbledore ruin my life, yeah. Hold on, Michael jumped in before Sirius could respond. Can you elaborate, Harry? Course I can, Harry said with a shrug. He could have taken me with him, but instead he let Dumbledore send me to Surrey because he didn't care to fight for me. And Surrey is where you lived with your mother's sister? Michael asked, checking his previous notes. Yep. Why did Dumbledore decide that? Michael asked. Did your parents not leave a will? They did, Severus cut in smoothly. It stated that Black was to be Harry's godfather in case anything happened to them. And you didn't take him? I tried, Sirius said, his voice become a little hysterical. I went there to get Harry, but Hagrid wouldn't let me. I said I was his godfather, but he said Dumbledore ordered him to take Harry to Petunia. Michael looked incredulously at the three men. And that was okay, that Dumbledore bypassed a legal will and decided custody for an orphaned infant. Thank you, Harry cried, that's what I've been saying. There were a lot of conflicts going on at the time, Severus said slowly. Dumbledore was considered to be a rather trusted figure, while most considered Black to have been the person responsible for Harry's parents' deaths. Sure, nobody considered you responsible, Sirius said snidely. Severus twitched very lightly and his eyes tightened. I'm confused, Michael admitted. How were either of you responsible for the death of Harry's parents? Snape heard a prophecy saying I'm going to kill old Timmy. Sirius sputtered and Severus sighed, in a long-suffering type of way, as Harry began explaining. So he told Timmy, didn't he, since he was the leader of his gang at the time. So my parents had to go in hiding and everyone thought Black was the secret keeper, but he was. It was Pettigrew. You know about the prophecy, Sirius gaped at Harry. You have violated at least 5 laws since we have arrived, Severus hissed at Harry. Would you mind if I explained in a way that keeps us all from being imprisoned? Go ahead, Harry smiled. Apologies, Severus said to Michael. It was a very chaotic time in our community. Michael thought Severus said they lived in a religious community in Scotland, but he had no idea what kind of religion had so much gang warfare. As Harry said, I overheard information regarding his family and passed it to my boss, Riddle, which led him to target Harry's parents. Once I realized he was targeting Harry's parents, I went to Dumbledore and asked him to protect them. They went into hiding, and people believed only Black knew of their location. So when they were murdered by Riddle, everyone believed that Black had turned them in, which was not helped by his foolish actions in attempting to kill Pettigrew, who faked his death and went to Azkaban a couple of weeks ago. Sirius finished with a smug look. Michael had a sudden realization, whatever community these people lived in, he wanted nothing to do with it. Gang warfare. Okay, so, Harry, did you forgive Severus for his part in the death of your parents? Harry shrugged, suppose so, yeah. But you won't forgive Sirius for letting Dumbledore, someone he was also working under, take custody of you as an infant. It's not the same, is it? It's not, Michael agreed. Some would say Severus' actions were much worse. That cleared the smirk quickly off Harry's face, and he looked carefully blank as he blinked owlishly a few times. He is not incorrect, Severus said quietly to Harry. The mutt did you wrong, but I am not blameless in putting you in that situation to begin with. Sirius, who looked insulted at being called a mutt, gave Severus a newfound look of appreciation at the rest of his words. But you were following orders, Harry said. And so was I, Sirius said. Harry, I swear to Merlin that I thought Dumbledore was making the best decision for you. I figured he knew something I didn't, and then I thought if I couldn't have you, what I really wanted, that at least I'd avenge your parents' murder by killing Pettigrew. Michael was beginning to wonder if he had somehow gained clients from some odd cult that worshipped magic and Merlin. SS will need to be moral guide, for HSB not good moral role model. Amelia said you laughed when they arrested you, Harry blurted out of the blue. Why? Because Pettigrew was a moron, Sirius said. Got the worst grades, didn't he? Only got 2 newts, and he tricked me, so when they showed up I was just in shock pup. Mikey would probably call it a nervous breakdown or something. How could Pettigrew have pulled it off? Michael assumed protesting the name Harry had christened him with would be fruitless at this point in the session. Why didn't you tell them you didn't do it? Harry asked. Weren't you and my dad training with them? They didn't let me, Sirius said, his eyes getting dark. Threw me straight in Azkaban with no trial. Azkaban is slang for prison, Michael checked. He had put it together with the context when it was mentioned before, but he had never heard of a person being imprisoned without a trial since the early 1930s in the United Kingdom. Sure, Harry said, distracted as he studied Sirius. So those cops were your friends, and they didn't even ask you if you did it. Not once. PFT, Harry scoffed. I knew magic cops were just as bad as muggle ones, didn't I? Told Snape when he had them following me around. Sirius grinned slightly at that as Michael noted down the word, muggle, and Severus groaned. You think Tonks would get fired if they knew she spent an afternoon looking for me with you while I was right beside her? Sirius asked, his eyes sparking mischievously. Fuck, Harry breathed, a small grin on his face now as well. They're just as bad and just as stupid as muggles, ain't they? Aren't they? Severus corrected him, only to be ignored as Sirius. Loud laughter filled the room. Harry grinned at Sirius, before nervously glancing towards Severus. Can I talk to you, in private? Harry gave a pointed look towards both Sirius and Michael. We can step out for a moment, Michael offered, though I would prefer it if we had conversations out in the open. I'm sure you would, Harry rolled his eyes. Not a chance. Michael glanced at the clock again, and was relieved to see that there were only 45 minutes in the session remaining. He would have been much more disgruntled at being ordered out of his office by a teenager if he didn't know that in less than an hour he could leave. Michael and Sirius stepped out in the lobby where Sirius gave him a shifty grin as he stuck his hands deep in his jacket pocket. Mind if I go smoke? Michael considered for a split second before nodding in defeat. Come on, I can show you where I go out back. Sirius followed Michael to the back lot where they both lit up. Thanks for helping me in there, Sirius said between inhales. I didn't want to be the one to point out that Snape made the worst decision out of the two of us, but I appreciate you doing it. Cheers, Michael murmured. Can I ask you a question? Sirius chuckled. Another one, you mean? Sure. Severus said Harry threw a knife at you and threatened to kill you. Do you think he would have? Absolutely, Sirius said without hesitation. The kid was furious. I was lucky he looked exhausted, I guess. And you told him you love him afterwards? Michael asked. Course, Sirius stubbed his cigarette out and gave Michael a curious look. Harry's the closest thing I'll ever have to a son. I even named him my heir the day after he was born. James was like my brother, you know. Harry's the most important person in my life. When I was in Azkaban, all I could think about was how much I regret not disobeying Dumbledore and running off with him. Harry could have killed me on the spot, and I would have loved him all the way to the afterlife. Michael thought that was an admirable view to take on the situation. Sirius showed a lot of immaturity, especially where Severus was considered, but he clearly loved Harry deeply. The two didn't say any more as they went back in the office. Michael sat and saw that Harry looked contemplative while Severus looked smug. Did you clear up your issue? Michael asked Harry. Suppose so, Harry said. Would you like to tell us what it was? Harry glanced at Severus, who smirked and nodded his head curtly. Wanted to ask Snape if he still hated Black, didn't I? Wasn't gonna sit here and play nice for another half an hour if Snape hates him. Harry shrugged. H shows deep loyalty to SS, likely caused by guardianship and rescue from homeless abusive situation. And I informed Harry that he should pursue his own relationships, regardless of my beliefs. But in this case, I believe Black is making a nearly adequate attempt, Severus said smugly. SS enjoys knowing H holds him in higher regard than SB, lack of maturity. Nearly adequate, Sirius chuckled. I guess the firebolt doesn't count then. What firebolt? Harry asked, instantly appearing alert and nearly excited. Severus gave him a long look, alongside a subtle glance towards Michael. The one you received for Christmas, he said slowly. You thought that I had purchased it. H experiences memory lapses during depressive episodes, Michael wrote as he interpreted Severus' look alongside the conversation. Harry furrowed his brows before smacking himself lightly on the forehead. Oh yeah, he gave Sirius a curious look, his head tilted slightly and his eyes narrow behind his glasses. Firebolts are expensive, I can pay you back. With our money, Sirius laughed. The goblins said that you already made a few withdrawals from the Black account. Harry flushed slightly, but Michael interrupted before he could respond. Sorry, but what is a firebolt, and what goblins? Son of a bitch, Severus muttered. The minister himself won't be able to keep us out of prison. You could obliviate him, Harry offered. He'd never remember a thing. Michael was being entirely ignored as the three men began arguing over the pros and cons of obliviating him. He began to feel panicky. He had no way of knowing what they meant by the odd term, but he didn't believe any of them were opposed to killing him if they thought they had a good enough reason. Will you speak with your godfather cordially, and not harm him again if he does not newly deserve it? Snape asked Harry. Guess so, Harry shrugged. And we will create a system where you come to me if you begin to forget the many valid points in you living long enough to take over as minister. Snape asked with his dark eyes narrow and severe. Yes, Harry said defensively. Made a deal, did I? Excellent, you two may step out, Severus said. I'll finish up here and perhaps we can avoid adjoining cells in Azkaban. Sirius chuckled while Harry gave Michael a self-satisfied look. Knew it didn't matter what I said, didn't I? You won't remember it anyway, he laughed as he exited the office. Michael looked pleadingly at Severus. Listen, I don't know what's going on, but my code of ethics prevents me from sharing any pertinent information on your sessions with anyone, he said quickly. I understand, Severus said calmly. However, with Harry's fame and Black's infamy, I can't take any chances. He pulled a long dark-handled stick out of his pocket. I want you to know that I truly appreciate all that you have done to help Harry and I regret that Harry placed me in this position. I believe it was intentional on his part, though perhaps I should have seen it coming. The child is incredibly cunning if you had not noticed. Michael gave up on decorum and leapt from his chair and backed away quickly. Severus, listen. Obliviate, Severus murmured with the stick pointed at Michael's head. Honey, are you okay? You look exhausted. Michael's wife Jennifer cooed over him as he ate his dinner. Long day, he said with a yawn. Sorry, love. Oh, was it that new family you said you were seeing today? She asked. New family? You must have me mixed up with your other therapist husband, he teased her. I haven't taken on any new families in the last 6 weeks. Chapter 21, Owls and Odd Godfathers. Never leave me again, Ron declared dramatically as he threw himself across Harry's dorm bed. Was it terrible, Ron? Harry laughed at his theatrics. Hermione and Theo spent the rest of the break just making goo-goo eyes at each other, and I think Scabbers is gone forever this time. He's been gone since Christmas. He's never been missing this long, Ron said sadly. Harry's jaw dropped as he realized he hadn't told Ron about Pettigrew. The Daily Prophet wrote a whole series of articles about Black's name being cleared, and how Pettigrew had been captured thanks to Professor Snape, but they didn't say a word about the man being a rat sleeping in Ron's bed for the last 3 years. Which, now that he thought about it, was disgusting. He's pretty sure the rat had went in the loo with Ron before. Scabbers was, Harry hesitated, hoping that Ron wasn't going to freak out. Scabbers was Pettigrew, he was an animagus. Ron sat up and gaped at Harry uncertainly. He probably would have had a harder time believing the wild story if every one of Harry's friends weren't well aware by now how Harry felt about lying. Scabbers was an actual human man, a stinking Death Eater, that slept in my bed. Yeah, Harry said slowly, wincing at the gross connections Ron was probably drawing in his head now. Ron's face underwent a series of odd transformations. First he went pasty white, then he sucked in a sharp breath, and his face went nearly as red as Susan's hair, before he finally exhaled and looked green. That's disgusting, mate, he shuddered. Yeps, Harry agreed. Even though Scabbers turned out to be an actual person, Harry thought Ron still looked mopey over the next few days as they all readjusted to the return to classes and a Dementor-free Hogwarts. Ron kept glancing down at his shirt pocket, then sighing a little as he realized his rat was gone. Harry considered how he'd feel if Sevi turned out to be an animagus. He wasn't. Harry checked the second Mavis brought him to Spinner's End, and felt bad for his friend. When Owens posted the January Hogsmeade weekend next weekend, Harry had the perfect idea. "Ron, when's your birthday?" Harry eagerly asked during breakfast. 1st of March, why?" Ron responded around a mouthful of sausages. "You're going with me to Hogsmeade this weekend," Harry said firmly. "It's a surprise. If you're looking for a handsome red-headed date to Hogsmeade, you're barking up the wrong Weasley." Ron nearly choked on his food, and Susan started giggling, as Harry raised an interested brow at the arrival of one of the Weasley twins. "Hiya, Harry," he grinned impishly. "I came to see if you had plans this weekend." Harry blushed under the stares of his friends, and the giggles of the three girls, though he wasn't sure why. "Just said I did, you apparently heard me, yeah." "You wound me, Harry," the older boy cried, dramatically clutching a hand to his chest. "When will you see that our love shines eternally, and accept my efforts to woo you?" Harry glanced at Ron, who was still red-faced and sputtering, before turning back to the twin. "I don't even know your name," he said coolly. "Suppose that means I don't love you either." Draco and Blaise let out howls of laughter, and Neville started snickering quietly beside them. "Fred," the twin said, offering his hand. "Frederick Fabian Weasley, the third," he said pompously with his nose stuck up in the air. "Pleasure to meet you." Harry looked disdainfully down at his proffered hand, then at Fred's face. "Is that your real name?" Theo asked curiously. "How dare you, sir?" Fred cried. "You Slytherins wound me with your cold-hearted cynicism." "It's not," Ron said. "It's just Fred Fabian Weasley, the only one, thankfully." The rest of the kids laughed, except for Harry, who was still watching Fred carefully. "Fred Weasley is still a distinguished name," he winked at Harry. "Better than Ronald Bilious Weasley anyway." Harry glanced at Ron, and saw his ears were turning red again, and figured Fred had insulted him in some way. "Ron's a great name," Harry said, icicles practically dropping off his words. "Better than Fred." Fred ignored his cold tone, and leant against the table where Harry was seated. "Is that why you're going to Hogsmeade with him?" "It's we aren't bloody hell, Fred," Ron sputtered. "We're just mates who hang out together." "Well, if it's not a date then," Fred gave Harry a lopsided grin. "Want to go with me?" "No," Harry said, frustrated again. "You and I ain't friends. Ron is my friend. Draco, Blaise, Neville, and Theo are my friends. Myoni, Susan, and Luna are my friends. If I wanted to hang out with someone in Hogsmeade, it would be them." Fred looked around the students around Harry, his eyes lingering on Susan and Blaise for a peculiar moment, before he stood up straight with an easy grin. "I'll ask you again next month," he said cheerily. "Later, snakes and honorary snakes." Fred sauntered off, and Harry saw George quickly running up to join him as he left the hall. "What the fuck?" he muttered. "Ron, your brother is weird as hell, ain't he?" "Yep." "How come you don't want to go out with Fred?" Susan asked curiously. "He's only 2 years older, he's funny, and Neville said he's nice to the younger kids in Gryffindor." "He is," Neville confirmed quietly. "So," Harry said curiously, "I'd rather hang out with guys." Blaise was studying Harry intently, his golden eyes were narrowed in thought. "But Harry—" Blaise interrupted Hermione as he kept watching Harry. "Harry," he said slowly, "you know Fred was asking you out, right? Like a date, like how Hermione and Theo go out on dates in Hogsmeade." "Oh," Harry blushed hotly, as he hadn't linked together Fred's insinuations with how Hermione and Theo were a couple. "Stupid. Why, he doesn't even know me." "Dates are how people get to know each other," Hermione said. "Theo and I were friends first, so we already knew each other. Usually if someone thinks they like someone else, then they invite." "Does Fred think he likes me then?" Harry interrupted Hermione. "Didn't I kick his ass in a duel?" "That's probably why he likes you," Draco said with a smirk. "He thought, oh Harry, you're so powerful." "He's probably right, you know," Luna said softly. "I imagine you looked amazing when you fought him." Harry blushed hotter at Luna's praise, as everyone started snickering. "Why would I want to go on a date with someone who just likes me because I'm powerful?" "He probably also thinks you're cute," Blaise smirked. "Can't imagine why, of course." Harry threw a bit of toast at Blaise. "Fuck off." "That's the real reason," Ron said as he laughed at Blaise's look of indignation. "He probably fancies how often you said fuck, thinks you're a rebel." Harry is a rebel, Susan said. First student in over 25 years to be expelled. Am I really? Harry asked interestedly. Yep, Dumbledore never expelled a student before, Susan said. I checked. Maybe he just likes you for you, Neville said to Harry as he brought the conversation back to Fred. You both like Quidditch, both are sort of troublemakers, and Fred seems to like a bit of danger. And Harry's very dangerous, Luna agreed serenely. That's very insightful, Neville. I wouldn't want to date someone who just likes me because I'm strong and dangerous, Harry said after thinking it over for a moment. I only want to date someone who thinks I'm dangerous, Susan grinned. Helps keep them in check. Draco shuddered dramatically. Everyone knows you're dangerous, Susan. Good. Fred being a guy doesn't bother you though, Theo asked hesitantly after everyone went quiet for a few seconds. What is it with Wixen and their weird judgmental bullshit? What's your blood like? What house are you in? Dark or light? Do ya shag boys or girls? It's madness. Harry threw his hands up in complete exasperation after his rant. I don't care, Theo said hastily after a quick nudge in his ribs from Hermione. But Hermione said muggles are weird about it, and you grew up muggle, so I was just curious. Muggles don't care, Harry laughed sharply. I saw blokes pick up other blokes off the street for a few hours then go home to their wives later, did I? His friends peered curiously at him until Harry hissed, and they quickly jumped back. You have an odd life, Harry Potter, Luna said softly. Everyone else nodded their head in agreement, and then thankfully moved on to discussing something else. I do have a Brill surprise though, Harry muttered to Ron, so go to Hogsmeade with me this weekend. Their week of classes seemed to drag on as teachers became more concerned with the upcoming exams, which weren't until the end of May. Harry wasn't sure why they'd be worried mid-January, but Snape gave him a death glare when he pointed that out in class, so he kept his opinions to himself over it. Their first defense class after break they started studying another new creature, a Hinkapunk. Hinkapunks were wispy smoke like creatures that carried lanterns and tried to lure people into dangerous bogs. Harry thought that if someone was dim enough to follow a smoky creature carrying a lantern, then they probably deserved to die. Excellent job, Harry, Lupin said cheerfully after Harry answered an easy question on the weird little creature. Harry raised both his brows at Lupin's easygoing response, but decided not to comment on it. Apparently his friends had no such restraint. Why's he being so nice? Susan asked quietly. Lupin's always nice, Theo said. Doesn't usually talk to Harry anymore though, does he? Ron said. Probably because he's with Black, yeah, Harry whispered. Black's my godfather, so he probably told Lupin to get along with me or something. His friends nodded and went back to listening to Lupin's lecture, but Harry slumped down in his seat. He remembered vividly the night Lupin found him in the corridor, and hoped Lupin's newfound cheer towards Harry was based on Black and not pity. Care of Magical Creatures was a long hour of the students all huddled around a bonfire of salamanders, as Hagrid talked about the different ways they were useful. They make fire, Harry muttered to Ron. What other use could they have? SHH, Draco said impatiently, as he tried to listen to Hagrid, without showing he was listening to Hagrid. Divination was just as boring as always. Trelawney moved their class on to palmistry, and spent half of the class one day discussing how Harry's palm had the shortest lifeline she had ever seen. Maybe I'm already dead, Harry said seriously to her when she declared it. I could be a ghost. Trelawney gave them the most homework she'd ever assignment at the end of that class. Quit antagonizing her, Blaze grumbled on their way to their next class. Just pretend to be scared. This, Ron gestured to the ridiculously long essay she assigned, is entirely your fault, mate. Harry figured it was still worth it. Harry, Blaze, Draco, and Susan were all studying after their Thursday afternoon lessons in the library when Harry was approached by another odd person. An older boy, Hufflepuff, with curly golden hair and friendly blue eyes. Harry was pretty sure his name was Diggory. He'd played him his last match, but he didn't pay attention to names much. Hello, he smiled at them all. Harry, I wondered if I could talk to you for a moment. Sure, Harry said, looking up at him. What's up? Diggory cleared his throat and shoved his hands deep in his pockets. I wanted to apologize, he said, for the Quidditch game. It wasn't fair how it ended, and I should have apologized sooner. Harry grit his teeth at the reminder of the whole school, seeing him faint and fall off his broom. "'Kay," he said tightly, "that it?" Diggory frowned. I tried to tell Madame Hooch we should have a rematch, even set up a day with Flint, but she wouldn't let us. "Okay. Are you?" Diggory looked uncertainly at the other students. "Are you mad? Because I truly am sorry." "I believe you," Harry said, "but it doesn't mean anything, does it?" Diggory hesitated as he considered what Harry said. "I suppose you're right. I don't think there is anything I can say to make up for it. Maybe I'll just cheer for you to win the upcoming Ravenclaw game then." "You do that," Harry snorted. "I'll be cheering for you to lose against Gryffindor next weekend, so we can beat them in the finals." Diggory laughed and gave Harry another smile. "We'll see," he said. "I should get back to my friends. I just wanted to apologize, but next time I'll come prepared, all right?" "Okay." Harry turned his attention back to his essay. He was painstakingly writing for McGonagall as Diggory walked away. "He's very handsome, you know," Susan giggled. "Lots of girls in Hufflepuff are always trying to talk to him." "Including you?" Draco asked with a smirk. Susan crinkled her nose. "He's too nice for me. Almost seems fake, you know." "Let me get this straight." Blaise put down his quill in favor of joining Draco and Susan's hushed conversation. "You want to date someone who thinks you're dangerous, and who isn't too nice?" "Yep," Susan nodded her head. "Probably good-looking and smart as well." "I'll only date someone smart," Draco said. "Imagine trying to make a conversation with someone like Goyle for the rest of your life." He shuddered dramatically. "Pretty girl with a head full of air." Blaise winked at Susan, who rolled her eyes. "Sounds like the ticket to me. What about you, Harry?" "What about me what?" Harry said. "What's your ideal girlfriend or boyfriend?" Draco asked. "I dunno." Harry tried to consider someone he would like to spend time with alone, like how Theo and Hermione always did. "I suppose, just someone who likes me for me, yeah." "That's your only requirement," Draco said, "that they like you for you." "Well, it's fucking rare, innit?" Harry said defensively. "People usually either like me cause I'm famous or cause of some other daft reason like being the heir of Slytherin. So yeah, it'd be brill if they were good-looking and smart, but mostly I just want them to like me for me." Draco slumped back at the heat in Harry's voice and offered him an apologetic look. "You're right, I'm sorry." He gestured towards Blaise and Susan. "All like you for you, just so you know." "Thanks, Dre." Harry felt a faint heat trying to work its way up his neck at his words. "I suppose you aren't so bad yourself." Draco stuck his tongue out at him, and they all laughed at the juvenile gesture from the usually uptight Malfoy heir. Harry thought more about dates, and dating and boyfriends and girlfriends as he wrote his essay. He wasn't blind or stupid. He had seen how his classmates had started making softer eyes towards one another, and how there seemed to be more kids holding hands and girls giggling in the halls than there used to be. He figured it was to be expected as everyone was getting older and full of hormones, as Snape would say. Harry had never actually dated anyone or ever been on a date with anyone. He'd been with men before, back when he was on the streets and he was cold or sick or starving. It was horrible and usually hurt both physically or mentally as he felt humiliated on his knees before. He knew that those times were just a means to an end, a way to offer something in exchange for food or shelter for a night. But dates, confessions of love, holding hands and kissing, it was an entirely different thing. And he didn't understand it at all. The next morning during breakfast, Harry was surprised to see a little brown owl fly straight to him during post and drop off a parchment. "Who's that from?" Neville asked curiously. "Dunno." Harry opened it and quickly read it. "Hey pup. Mooney said you have a Hogsmeade weekend coming up tomorrow, and I wanted to know if you'd want to grab a drink at the Three Broomsticks with me. You could bring your friends if you'd like. I'd say it's my treat, but apparently since we're sharing a vault, it's our treat. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, let's say at 2 o'clock. If you don't show then I'll cry, but no pressure." "Serious?" Harry unwillingly grinned at Black's stupid joke about crying if Harry didn't show up tomorrow. "It's Black," he said as he handed Susan's nosy self the letter. "Wants to know if we want to get a drink with him tomorrow at the Three Broomsticks, says it's his treat. If I go, anyone want to go with?" Everyone except Blaise and Neville eagerly agreed. "Can't," Blaise grinned. "I've got a hot date with a gorgeous twin." "You're going with Ron's brother." Harry was surprised and oddly annoyed by this news. "What? No, Merlin Harry, there's more than just one set of twins in this castle." Everyone else laughed so hard that the other Slytherins and nearby Ravenclaws were peering curiously at them. "Oh," Harry shrugged, "I don't know any other twins. Who is it then?" "Padma Patil, she's in our year," Hermione said. "Honestly, Harry, sometimes I wonder if you even know our names or not." "Well, I see you guys every day, don't I?" Harry said before looking towards Neville, who also turned down his offer for tomorrow. Do you have a date too? No, Neville stammered, turning blood red at the sudden interested attention of their group. I'm not going to Hogsmeade. I told Luna I'd help her study for her herbology test next week. Neville is a good friend, Luna said. The plants just speak to him more than they do me. I'd rather have the Nargles than plants, Ron assured her, unless they have a plant that can tell the future. No, they don't. Theo rolled his eyes at Ron's newly disappointed look. What are you guys even learning in divination? Mostly that Harry's going to die young in a painfully tragic way, Ron said with a half-smile. And that Trelawney is a sherry-loving fraud. Everyone was still snickering about that, as the bell rang indicating the start of classes soon. Harry thought about Black's offer through his morning classes, and decided that he'd check with Snape before making any decisions on it after their evening potions lesson. Snape seemed to be in a good mood during their lesson. He yelled at Finnegan a few times, awarded Harry and Draco 20 points for their perfect potion, and only assigned 2 feet of homework instead of his usual 3 or 4. Harry lingered by his desk after everyone else left at the end of class to ask about Black's letter. What can I help you with? Snape asked after the last student left the room. Here, Harry handed him the letter and waited as Snape quickly read it. I know you and I are considered to be friends, but I do not believe I was invited, Snape said dryly as he returned the parchment to Harry. Harry grinned at the look on Black's face if he brought Snape tomorrow and shook his head. No, sir, I was just wondering if you thought I should go. Snape sat back in his chair and steepled his hands together on his desk. Why would you ask me that? He asked Harry curiously. Well, I know you guys don't hate each other so much anymore, but I didn't know if you'd be mad or something if I went. Between the mind healer and Snape, Harry was starting to realize that people and their feelings apparently mattered quite a bit more than he used to think, and he thought maybe Snape's would be hurt if he went to see Black tomorrow. I will not be mad, upset, or any other negative emotion if you go see Black tomorrow, Snape said, reading through Harry's question easily. He is your godfather, and you are welcome to spend as much time with him as you would like. Harry chewed on his bottom lip as he watched Snape carefully for any tells that would give away his real thoughts on the matter. After a few moments of Snape looking perfectly at ease, Harry nodded, figuring he wasn't lying. Brill, Ron, Draco, Susan, Hermione and Theo said they'd go with me then. Do you not have any other friends you're accompanying tomorrow? Snape asked. No. Snape's eyes looked amused at Harry's answer. I was under the impression that a Mr. Fred Weasley was going to accompany you to Hogsmeade. I confiscated an interesting note between him and his brother as he debated on the best way to ask you. Son of a bitch, Harry hissed in Parseltongue. Not you too, he said to Snape. I swear everyone's obsessed with dates right now. Blaise has a date, Hermione and Theo are dating, Fred asked me on a date, I don't. Harry grimaced as he realized the real problem he had with it all. I don't understand it, he admitted quietly. Hermione said dates are to get to know someone, but how do you even know if you want to get to know them? Snape tapped his chin thoughtfully as he considered Harry's question. Perhaps you should ask Black that tomorrow. I am afraid that dating and romance are quite out of my area of expertise. You don't date? Harry asked. I have, Snape said slowly, though not as much as others, and not any in recent years. I believe Mr. Morris would say I have difficulty with commitment. You committed to me just fine, he pointed out. And look how that turned out. Harry grinned at Snape's sarcastic tone when he said that. Did you date anyone when you were a student? A couple of people, Snape said evasively, though I was rather pathetically in love with your mother, so the people I dated quickly ended it once they realized they were only poor substitutes. How do you? What does it mean to be in love with someone? Harry blushed hotly at the odd question, but figured that Snape was the best person to ask, since he didn't usually laugh when he knew Harry was being serious. Loving someone is quite different from being in love with someone, Snape said, politely ignoring Harry's red face. You can love someone and care about their well-being and appreciate them for their own unique traits. This could be a family member or friend. Being in love with someone is more of a romantic feeling. Does that make sense? No, Harry admitted, not really. Snape sighed. Ask Black if you must. He will likely have a much more clear response. I'll think about it, Harry said. He knew Snape wouldn't laugh or take the mickey out of him for the dumb question, but he didn't trust Black like that. I should get to the library, he said regretfully. Of course, Snape said, If you do decide to see Black tomorrow, I would enjoy hearing how it went, if you would like to come see me afterwards. All right, Harry agreed easily. He thought of something he forgot to ask before, sir. Yes. What do you do when you took the note from Fred and George? Snape smirked in a maliciously amused sort of way that reminded Harry that the man was the head of Slytherin for a reason. I took 30 points from Gryffindor and informed him you would prefer the huge spectacle that he was debating on. Pity he apparently had not believed me. I was hopping for another singing dwarf. Bastard, Harry hadn't forgotten the mortifying dwarf from Valentine's Day his second year. You're lucky he just asked me at breakfast, or I'd have to get revenge, sir. Pity, Snape repeated without looking sorry at all. Perhaps I will encourage him to try again. I'll remember this, Harry warned him. Next time I see Neville about to add the wrong ingredient, I'll just let him blow up the cauldron. Snape grimaced at Harry's threat. Truce, he said. Truce, Harry agreed. I'll come see you tomorrow, yeah. Bring me back sugar quills, Snape yelled after him. Harry laughed at Snape's cheerful mood clear to the library. It was unusual to see him acting so ridiculous, but maybe the lack of Dementors improved everyone's mood in the castle. The next morning after breakfast, Harry and his friends bundled up and prepared for their trip. I have to take Ron on an important errand, so we'll meet you guys at the Three Broomsticks at 2, Harry told their other friends as they split up at the village gates. Theo and Hermione were going on another date, and Draco and Susan were meeting up with Daphne Greengrass, Hannah Abbott, and a couple other students in their year to walk around the village. What's the errand? Ron asked as Harry pulled him alongside him towards their destination. Surprise, Harry said shortly with a small grin. Hope it's warm, Ron shivered dramatically at the frigid temps. I dunno how you guys are gonna play Ravenclaw next weekend. Harry rolled his eyes at Ron and pulled on his core lightly. Warm us up. Oh, duh. The tips of Ron's ears turned red, and he ruffled his hair self-consciously. Forgot about magic for a minute, did I? Prat, Harry said fondly. Come on, it's just up here. The Mage's Meow Pet Shop, Ron asked quizzically. Our errand is in a pet store. Yep, Harry pulled Ron inside and gestured towards the many different sections of the store. Happy early birthday. I don't get it. I'm getting you a new pet, Harry said. I know you miss Scabbers, even if he was a disgusting little rat man, and thought maybe you'd want a new one. Harry had thought it was a brilliant idea, and the perfect way to cheer up his friend, but the longer Ron stared at him, the more he questioned his idea. Sorry, he eventually mumbled as Ron still stared. It was stupid, let's just go. Wait, Ron stuck his arm out and stopped Harry without touching him. Harry, I'm just surprised. Nobody else even cared that my rat was gone. Even Percy said it's just a pet Ronald when I told him about it. Harry shrugged. Well, Percy's a git, isn't he? I'd be upset if Sevi turned out to be an animagus on the run. He was actually still disappointed to have lost Grim, but he tried not to think about that because it made him want to curse Black every time he remembered the dog he befriended. Ron gave Harry one of his lopsided grins and looked around at all the different sections of pets. What do you think I should get? Not a rat, Harry said. They're disgusting. Ron laughed and eyed the section of owls. Simon, come help me find a pet that isn't a madman. Harry and Ron spent a happy couple of hours holding, petting, and arguing over the best pet. Harry tried to convince him to get a snake when he heard one of them complaining about the store. It's cold, the little black snake hissed. Sorry, Harry hissed back, I'll tell the shopkeeper. Ron shook his head and backed away from the tank of snakes that were all now hissing their complaints to Harry. I don't want a pet that only you can talk to, he said. I'd be like a permanent third wheel. Harry shrugged as he stroked and admired the snakes that were all slithering on top of each other for his attention. Apparently Ron also didn't want a cat, they're boring. He said, or a spider. Ron actually turned pale at the tank of them. I think an owl's your best bet, Harry said. They went back and forth for a while over different owls, when Ron finally picked a little one that looked like Sevi, but with grey feathers instead of black. He's so cute, a nearby Gryffindor girl squealed. Ron rolled his eyes, but looked pleased as he pet the owl that perched on his shoulder. He's perfect, Ron said. Wait, reveal yourself, Harry ordered the owl with a harsh pull of magic. The owl hooted indignantly as the spell ruffled its feathers, but otherwise didn't change at all. Not an animagus then, Harry declared. So yep, he's perfect. Ron grinned happily as they grabbed owl supplies for the little grey owl that Ron dubbed Galvin. He tried naming it Chudley, after his favourite Quidditch team, but Harry said it sounded too much like Dudley, so he went with Galvin, the team's keeper's name, instead. When Harry paid for the supplies, he told the shopkeeper about the snake's complaints. They said it's cold in here, he said, and they don't like frozen mice, they want fresh ones. I'll keep that in mind, the shopkeeper said with a terrified look on his face. Harry assumed that a person who worked with snakes every day wouldn't be so scared of Parseltongue. Clearly he was wrong. You mind if I run Galvin up to the castle? Ron said when they left the store. I don't think Madame Rosmeter will be happy if I bring him with us. Course not, Harry said. I gotta go get stuff for Snape and Lou anyway. Thanks again, mate, Ron said happily. You're a good friend. Harry smiled to himself all the way to Honeydukes. Snape acted like Harry was so bad at other people's emotions, but look at what he did, cheered Ron right up. Hopefully he even changed Ron's boggart. How could someone be scared of their friend that helped them pick out a cute little owl? He made a mental note to tell Snape about it later today. He'd probably rub it in a bit. Harry wasted a little bit of time snagging sweets for Luna and a thing of sugar quills for Snape. He scowled at the pup treats he had gotten Grim last time he was there, and tried to push the whole embarrassing incident out of his head. He checked the time after he paid, and saw it was still rather early, only 1:15, but decided heading towards the 3 broomsticks was better than standing around in the snow. He entered the pub and shook the snow out of his hair. He made to sit at the counter, planning on ordering something to snack on while he waited, when someone yelled his name. Harry, over here. He glanced around, and saw Black and Lupin were seated in a booth off to the side. He felt his shoulders tense up, and rolled them a few times as he slowly walked over to them. Come sit, Black smiled as he moved so Harry could have the corner seat with the view of the door. You're early, he said happily. Cold out, ain't it? Harry shrugged. Where are your friends? Lupin asked politely. They'll be here in a bit, Harry said. Ron took his new owl up to the castle, and everyone else had plans till 2. Ron got a new owl, Black said. Good. I felt guilty when I realized Pettigrew going to Azkaban meant that Ron lost his pet. I remembered, Harry said, preening slightly with how pleased with himself he was. Told him I'd buy him any pet he wanted as an early birthday gift. Good job, pup, Black smiled. Lupin smiled as well as he got to his feet. I'm gonna go, I've got lessons to plan and papers to grade. Harry politely turned his head as the two said goodbye, and raised his hand cordially when Lupin left. He doesn't really have anything to do, Sirius said. He's just being nice because he knew I wanted to spend time with you. Why? Black looked confused at his question and scrunched his brows down. Why was he being nice, or why did I want to spend time with you? Why do you want to spend time with me? Harry clarified. Because you're my godson, Black said, and I want to get to know you better. Harry grimaced as he thought of all the things about himself Black already knew. What do you want to know? Everything, Black laughed. What's your favorite color? What's yours? Harry shot back. Gold, he said. Mine's green. Favorite class? You first, Harry said with a small grin. Mine was Transfiguration, Black said, grinning as well. I was a right dab at it and Minnie loved me. Minnie? Professor McGonagall, she hated being called Minnie, so your dad, and I did it every day. Harry laughed as he imagined McGonagall's face if someone were to call her that. Mine's potions, he admitted. Because Snape teaches it, Black asked as he waved down Madame Rosmeter. Harry shook his head. Because I have to actually work, don't I? It's not easy like all my other classes. Hold that thought, pup, Black said as Rosmeter sauntered over to their table. Sirius Black, she smiled. What can I do for you now? Are you still pretending that you aren't madly in love with me? Black said with a charming sort of smile. Because if so, then I guess we just want to order something to eat and some drinks, but if not, then I'm ready to propose. Rosmeter laughed and drew a few jealous eyes their way as she batted at Black's arm. You're a rascal, she said. I think a certain professor would be jealous if we did. You're right, Black said solemnly. Minerva would never forgive me if I ran away with you. He's incorrigible, Rosmeter said to Harry. A terrible flirt, isn't he? Rosmerta's eyes were glittering in a way that made him think she liked the attention. Harry figured Black was good-looking enough to catch her eye. His long dark hair, leather jacket, and happy-go-lucky personality had a certain appeal to it probably. "If you say so," Harry muttered as he slumped down in his seat and glanced around the room warily. He could feel the curious stares of the other patrons and hated it. "Can we get a few orders of chips?" Black said. "And Harry, how many kids are coming?" "5 others," Harry said. "And 7 butterbeers," Black added. "You can just add it all to my tab." "Cheers," Rosmerta said with another wink as she swept off to fill their order. Black turned back to Harry with an easy smile that Harry was beginning to suspect was permanently attached to the man's face. "Where were we?" he said. "Oh, yeah, okay, so potions is your favorite because your other classes are easy. How come they're so easy?" Harry smirked as he suddenly had a chance to show off a bit. "Because of this." He pointed his finger at Black's leather jacket and turned it red and sparkly before making it blue and silky, and finally turning it back to the black leather it started as. "Merlin," Black said, "thought maybe you only did wandless magic when you were trying to kill people." "That too," Harry said easily as the drinks and snacks floated to their table. "Potions doesn't use much magic though, does it? So I have to pay attention in that class." "That's amazing." Black sounded genuinely impressed, which made Harry sit up straighter and grin just a bit. "Your dad would have given anything for power like that. Hell, I still would." Harry's grin faded just a bit as he realized that was probably the first thing most people remembered about him. "It's not that great," he said. "Course it is," Black disagreed, "but I'm sure it's not as interesting as, let's see, who's your favorite professor, and don't say Snape." "But it is Snape," Harry said. "Second favorite then," Black said. "I already know he's your favorite." "Flitwick," Harry said, "gave me points once when I threatened a whole group of Ravenclaws, didn't he? Was McGonagall yours then?" "Her an old sluggy," Black said. "He was the potions professor when I was a student. Right pushover. Let us do whatever we wanted if we batted our eyes just right. The man was obsessed with Lily, though." Harry laughed when Black batted his eyes at Harry coquettishly. He snagged a few chips off the tray while Black started again with more questions. "Favorite food?" Harry's was miniature treacle tarts, which Black said wasn't a food, and Harry argued that it absolutely counted, and Black was shepherd's pie. "Favorite music?" They both liked the Led Zeppelin album that Snape got for Harry. He had listened to 1,000,000 times on the charmed disc, player him, and Snape fixed up over the summer. "Who's your best friend, best guy and best girlfriend?" Harry's was Susan, and Blaze and Black was Harry's dad, and he admitted he didn't have many female friends. They were arguing over the best animal. Harry said owls while Black adamantly said it was dogs, when Harry's friends started trickling in. "Hello," Hermione said shyly as her and Theo were the first to arrive. Their cheeks were pink from the cold, and Harry thought their lips looked suspiciously chapped. "I'm Hermione Granger, and this is Theo Not." Black did a subtle double take at Theo's name, but smiled at both of them and offered them a seat. "I'm Sirius Black," he said. "It's nice to meet you." They repeated the process as Susan, Draco, and Ron all arrived. "You get Galvin set up?" Harry asked Ron. "Yep," Ron's smile stretched across his whole face. He flew right up to Sevi and they started hooting at each other. "Suppose our owls are gonna be mates too." "Who's Galvin?" Draco asked as he sat down and snagged a butterbeer. "An owl, stupid," Susan laughed as she sat next to Harry. "He's my owl," Ron said proudly. "Harry got him for me for my birthday." "Oh, Harry, that was sweet of you," Hermione said. "That's Harry, sweet as can be," Theo rolled his eyes. "You're Molly's son, right?" Black asked Ron. "You look just like her." "Yep," Ron confirmed as he sat down. "People usually call me Ron, though. Molly's son is a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?" "Do we like Black?" Susan whispered directly in Harry's ear under the cover of Black and Draco's laughter. "For now," Harry muttered. Susan nodded in understanding, and Harry felt a new wave of appreciation for his friend. If he had said he didn't like Black, he had no doubt that she would have spent the rest of the time trying to catch the man on fire or some other mad scheme, which was one of the many reasons why Susan was his best friend. "And I've heard about you, of course," Black said to Susan as he slid her a drink. "Painted inconsiderate asshole on Remus' door, yeah." "How'd you know?" Susan asked. "Even Lupin didn't know." "You admitted it right in front of him," Black said. You lot know he's got super hearing, right? There's no such thing as a quiet whisper around him. Trust me. Harry and Susan exchanged shocked looks, as they hadn't actually considered that during their many whispered conversations. Honestly, Hermione rolled her eyes in exasperation. It's like neither of you even bothered to read the textbook. We didn't, Harry and Susan said simultaneously, before the whole group cracked up in laughter. All right, so how'd you all meet Harry? Black asked everyone. I met Harry first, Susan said. He was at the library in Diagon Alley, just breaking the law in the middle of the legal section. I walked right up to him and said, "You're going to be expelled for that, you know." And I told her that magic that didn't use a wand wasn't illegal. Harry grinned as he remembered Susan's pompous tone. It felt like it was forever ago that they met. Black chuckled at that and gave Harry a look of approval. How about you lot? I met him in Madame Malkin's, Draco said. He was the rudest kid I've ever met in my life. Then he summoned his jacket from the doorway like it was nothing. Ron and I met him on the train, Hermione said. After he stuck his wand in our faces, and I thought I was about to be murdered, Ron grinned. Then he threatened the trolley lady and she still won't sell him treats. All the kids laughed about that. It was absolutely true. The trolley lady holds a grudge worse than anyone Harry had ever met, including himself. How about you, Theo? Black asked. We met on the first night. After Harry nearly killed a student during the opening duels, I figured I should either be his friend or ask for a resort, Theo said dryly with a small smirk towards Harry. Then the rest of us just sort of clicked. Black-eyed Theo and Hermione's clasped hands. Looks like it, he grinned. Theo and Hermione both turned a little pink, but the rest of them grinned. What's an opening duel? Black asked curiously when Draco was done teasing Hermione and Theo. It's a Slytherin tradition, Draco said. He explained the duels and how they sorted out any problems students had with each other on the first night, while Black listened attentively. And someone had a problem with Harry on his first ever night, he asked skeptically. Plenty of students used to have a problem with Harry, Draco said. Boys who lived and all, Theo added. And now they worship the ground he walks on, Ron said with a roll of his eyes. Black laughed again and they all fell into more casual conversation. Black asked Draco about his mom, and shared a few stories about her when she was younger. Harry realized that Black was what Susan would call a social butterfly. He seemed to enjoy talking to all of them and acted like he wanted to get to know them all. Harry felt the tiniest smidge of guilt at thinking he nearly killed someone who probably didn't really deserve it, the whole grim problem notwithstanding. There's the twins, Susan giggled suddenly, as Fred and George walked in the pub with a group of their own friends, and took up a table on the other side of the room. Fred doesn't look too broken up over your rejection, does he? Draco said as he glared across the room at them. Shut up, Harry hissed, ducking down slightly to avoid being seen. He hadn't decided what he thought about Fred yet, and didn't want to attract his attention right now. Who's Fred? Black whispered. My brother, Ron said. Asked Harry out and Harry told him no. Tall red-headed twin? Black asked. Yes, Hermione said. Black looked at Harry and quirked his lips up in an amused sort of look. Mooney told me he thought you and Susan were a couple, he laughed. He didn't tell me you had an older boy after you. Black waggled his brows in the same way Ron did when he was teasing Harry about something. We are not a couple, Harry sputtered as Susan giggled. She's my best friend. Harry's my honorary brother, Susan said, as she threw her arm around his shoulder in the casual way Harry had started to enjoy. My auntie said if Snape wasn't so clingy, she would have let him move in with us last year. Harry turned to Susan and stared at her slack-jawed for a moment. She did, he asked quietly. Yep, Susan confirmed, but then Snape gave you a damn house and we knew it was a lost cause. Harry felt a warmth wash over him at that. He knew Amelia had been kind to him and even wrote him a few times since the summer he stayed there, but he didn't know that she offered to be his guardian. That was nice of her, he said quietly. My mum applied to be your guardian too, Ron added. Said we could dye your hair and you'd fit right in. Everyone laughed at that, since all of Ron's siblings had bright orange hair. Nobody would even notice one extra Weasley, Draco pointed out, but then Fred would have to find a new crush. Harry hissed quietly at Draco as he brought the subject back to Harry. Tell me about your classes, Black cut in with a subtle wink towards Harry. It's been years since I've even thought about them. Harry relaxed slightly as everyone started talking about the classes they liked and disliked for the rest of the conversation. He drank his butterbeer and cut in every so often until it started to get darker outside. "We should probably head back soon," Hermione said when she checked the time. "We don't want to get in trouble." "Wonder what that would be like," Susan grinned. Black jumped up and smiled at the students as they gathered their bags. "It was nice meeting you all," he said earnestly. "Until I find a job, I'm making myself at home here, so I'll probably see you next time you guys are in the village." "Are you rejoining the Auras?" Harry asked, unconsciously wrinkling his nose in distaste. "Fuck no," Black said as he walked with them through the exit. "Why would I want to work with the same gits that tossed me in prison without a trial?" Harry nodded his head in complete agreement. "Good," he said. He glanced towards his other friends and made a quick decision. "I'll catch up with you guys at dinner, yeah? I'm gonna talk for a minute, then I told Snape I'd stop by." His friends agreed easily and started racing each other towards the castle. "Snape making sure I didn't accidentally kill you," Black said casually as he stuck his hands in his pockets and strolled alongside Harry as he slowly walked towards the castle. Harry gave him an incredulous look. "Do ya think you could?" "Probably not," Black said with a small huff of laughter, "but he might still think it." "Maybe," Harry allowed. "I wanted to ask you something, though." "Sure, what's up, pup?" Did you tell Lupin all that stuff I said?" Harry asked quickly. It had been bothering him ever since they left the Mind Healer's office over break and Snape said that Lupin and Black were once again dating. Black stopped in the middle of the path and gave Harry an uncharacteristically serious look. "I didn't," he said. "I swear, I wish I hadn't have heard it. Not because I don't want to know all about you," he said hastily, "but because I wish I would have learned it once I earned your trust, not because you didn't know who you were talking to." Harry released his breath in a relieved sigh. It was bad enough that Lupin knew his boggart and caught him being stupid in the corridor one night. He didn't want to imagine the man knowing even more about him. "Good," he said as they started walking again. Thanks, I guess." "I'm pretty decent at keeping secrets," Black said. "I never told anyone that your dad wet the bed all through his first year." "He did," Harry said with a surprised laugh. "Fuck, that would be embarrassing." "Oh, it was," Black grinned. "Plus we didn't know then that Remus was a wolf, so Remus knew the whole time." "Oh my God," Harry started laughing harder at that. "Why, he wet the bed?" "He'd never been away from home. His parents, your grandparents, spoiled him rotten. He was an only child until I moved in, so moving out to Hogwarts was a big change for him." Harry listened as Black shared a couple other stories about James Potter. It wasn't so bad hearing about him like this. It was a lot like when Snape talked about his mom. Just goofy stories about what his parents were like when they were younger. Harry thought it was unfair that everyone else seemed to know all these things about them, that he'd never get a chance to find out for himself before he reminded himself that it didn't matter. They couldn't come back from the dead, and Harry didn't need them any. It was pointless to pine over something you couldn't have. When they arrived at the gates, Black stopped and smiled genuinely at Harry, in a way that made his grey eyes crinkle around the corners. "You play Ravenclaw next weekend, right?" he asked. "Yep." Black shuffled his feet a bit and looked almost nervous as he asked him, "Mind if I come?" "Come to the match?" Harry asked, bewildered. "Why?" Black shrugged. "I used to think about you being a famous Quidditch star one day. When you were a baby, course I thought you'd be a chaser like your dad and I were, and I just thought it might be nice to come cheer you on, like I always wanted to." Harry watched him carefully as he felt another one of the odd waves of warmth crash into him. "Why, yeah," he stammered as he kicked a pebble across the pathway. "That be all right." Black smiled and shook his hair back out of his face. "Perfect," he said. "Never thought I'd need a reason to buy a Slytherin scarf." Harry smirked as he remembered Snape saying how his dad and Black hated Slytherins when they were students. "You have to wear green or you can't come," he said mock solemnly. "The Seeker for Ravenclaw is a twit, so you don't want people to be confused about who you're cheering for." All right, Black put his hands up in surrender. "I'll be there and I'll wear green." "Brill," Harry said. "Guess I'll see you next weekend then." "Wouldn't miss it," Black said as Harry walked through the gates. "Send Minnie my lovey." Harry flipped him off even as he laughed on his way to the castle doors. He didn't trust Black, not yet, but he couldn't deny that the man's cheerful mood was a bit contagious. He figured if he had spent 12 years in prison and finally had his name cleared, he'd probably be pretty happy about it too, though. Harry still had a small smile on his face as he made his way to the dungeons. Black was a lot different from him, but he was an all-right bloke so far. Harry was mostly relieved now that he hadn't killed him. A bit